Welcome to Mindset Matters Book Club YouTube channel. Please subscribe and like to hear new book summaries.
It is genuinely great to be here. And today we are tackling a subject that is, well, it's one of the most natural parts of being human, and yet somehow it's still one of the hardest things to talk about, openly, honestly, without all that crippling awkwardness.
Oh, you are not kidding. We are diving deep into the book Intimacy by Ita O'Brien. And I have to admit, when I first saw this book, I thought, okay, here we go, another relationship guide, communicate more, schedule date nights, got it. But this is really different. It feels almost technical in a way I just did not expect, but technical in a way that actually unlocks the emotional side of things.
And technical is the perfect word. And it makes total sense when you know who the author is. I know O'Brien isn't the therapist, not in the traditional sense anyway. She's a movement director. Yeah. She's the pioneer, really, of the role of the intimacy coordinator in film and TV.
Right.
She's the person who literally wrote the rule book on how to simulate sex safely on a movie set.
And that's such a wild angle to come from, right? We're taking what is essentially a workplace safety manual for Hollywood actors, and we're asking, hey, can these same rules, fix my marriage? Or can this help me figure out modern dating?
Exactly. And I think the best place to start, maybe not with the book itself, but with a moment in pop culture that I think almost everyone will remember. Do you remember the BBC series Normal People?
Oh, vividly. The Sally Rooney adaptation. It was absolutely everywhere during, the 2020 lockdown era. I feel like you couldn't go online without seeing Connell's silver chain.
It was a massive, massive cultural phenomenon. But I want to zoom in on one very specific scene. It's right at the beginning, the prologue. You've got the two main characters, Marianne and Connell. They're 17. They're on a bed. He's in a chair. She's on the bed. And the air is just, you can feel it crackling.
It's a masterclass in tension. But wasn't that glossy Hollywood tension, was it? It felt different.
No, it was deeply awkward and so vulnerable. She admits she feels like a misfit. He admits he doesn't know how he feels half the time. And then you get this breakthrough. They kiss. They start to undress. But then, and this is the part that I think really broke the internet, the dialogue shift.
Right. He stops. He actually pauses and he asks her, is that what you want?
Yes.
And then he says, if it hurts, I'll stop.
And that moment just resonated globally because it showed us something we almost never see on screen.
Yeah.
Explicit spoken consent that didn't kill the mood. In fact, it made it better.
It enhanced it.
It absolutely did. It wasn't just a sex scene. It was a scene about two people navigating this really high-stakes emotional moment with actual care. It felt real. It felt consensual. And it was awkward, but in this really beautiful way.
And the reason that scene worked so well, the reason it wasn't just a clumsy, gratuitous mess, is pretty much down to the author of this book, to Ita O'Brien. She was the intimacy coordinator on that show.
And for anyone who doesn't know, an intimacy coordinator, or an IC, it's a pretty new role in the industry. Before people like O'Brien, sex scenes were often just, improvisational chaos.
Improvisational chaos sounds absolutely terrifying if you're an actor. You're naked, there are 30 crew members standing around, and the director just yells, action.
That's pretty much exactly how it used to be. I mean, Michaela Coel, the creator of I May Destroy You.
Brilliant show.
Brilliant. She actually dedicated her BAFTA award to Ita O'Brien. She stood up there and thanked her for making the space safe from exploitation and abuse. So O'Brien has genuinely revolutionized the film industry. But the mission of this book, of Intimacy, is to take those professional tools, the ones she used to choreograph Normal People, and show us how to apply them to our real lives.
And that's the premise that really hooked me. The idea that the very things used to fake intimacy on screen, things like choreography, clear agreements, consent, boundaries, are actually the missing keys to creating real intimacy in our own bedrooms.
It sounds so backwards, doesn't it? We have this idea that bringing rules or guidelines into sex will just kill the romance. We think it's supposed to be spontaneous and wild and unstructured.
Yeah, totally.
But O'Brien's whole argument is that structure creates safety. And safety is the absolute prerequisite for real freedom.
Okay, so let's unpack this. We're basically taking the intimacy on set guidelines and bringing them home.
Let's do it.
So to really get why we even need these tools, O'Brien starts by talking about the mirror. She quotes Hamlet, the idea of art holding a mirror up to nature.
Right. Art is supposed to reflect our lives, to show us who we are.
Right.
But O'Brien points out a huge problem with the mirror we've all been looking into for the last few decades. For a very long time, the sex we saw on screen wasn't holding a mirror up to nature at all. It was chaotic or completely unrealistic or just hyper-performative.
She quotes the actress Gemma Whelan from Game of Thrones, who described the sex scenes on that show, before they brought in ICs. She called them a frenzied mess.
A frenzied mess. Just think about that phrase. A director shouting, "Action, just go for it." Maybe yelling out random instructions like bite a boob or slap a bum.
Yeah.
It might look sexy in the final cut, but the process of making it was anything but intimate.
It was panic.
Panic masquerading as passion.
Yeah.
It's exactly.
And the bigger problem is that feedback loop, isn't it? We watch these movies, we see this seamless, wordless encounter where nobody ever bangs an elbow or needs a towel or has to ask, is this okay? And then we think.
That's what sex is supposed to be.
Yes.
And it creates this completely false standard.
Mm-hmm.
Real people start to think that if their intimate life needs a discussion or any kind of negotiation, they must be doing it wrong. It leads to so much confusion and shame. We end up acting out what we think sex should look like based on that frenzied mess we saw on TV instead of actually connecting with what we feel.
And this brings us right to what O'Brien calls the elephant in the room.
The silence. The absolute deafening silence that surrounds intimacy. It exists on film sets for sure, where everyone's too embarrassed to talk about the mechanics of a nude scene, but it's just as bad, if not worse, in our own relationships.
Because we've all bought into this myth, the myth of spontaneity.
Yes, this cultural belief that talking about it ruins the mood. If you have to ask, can I touch you here, or do you have a condom?
Yeah.
It's seen as unromantic, clinical.
That kills the vibe.
But O'Brien argues the total opposite. She says that structure and safety actually create the container where you have permission to be wild.
It's like a playground, isn't it? You can run around and go crazy inside a playground precisely because there's a fence. If there was no fence and you were right next to a highway, you'd be terrified. You'd be so careful.
That is a perfect analogy. The intimacy on set guidelines are the fence. And in the book, she breaks them down into 4 main tenets.
Wow.
These are the pillars of her whole methodology.
Okay, let's go through them. These are the tools we need to put in our toolkit. So, tenet number 1, open communication.
This moves us beyond that, I guess this is happening now, stage of sex.
Yes. The awkward silence where you're both just hoping for the best.
Exactly. It's about stating your intentions clearly.
Yeah.
It's about actually vocalizing what's happening instead of just relying on nonverbal cues that can be so easily misread.
And nonverbal cues are so tricky. Like, if I sigh, does that mean I'm enjoying this, or I'm bored, or you're literally crushing my rib?
Precisely. On a film set, you can't just guess if your co-star is okay with you touching their leg. You have to ask. O'Brien says we need to stop guessing in our relationships, too. It's about moving from the implicit to the explicit.
Which leads perfectly into tenet number 2, agreement and consent.
And right here, she references the wheel of consent, which is a really brilliant concept developed by Dr. Betty Martin. It's a bit more nuanced than just saying yes or no. It's about establishing boundaries before the clothes even come off.
This is the part I think people really struggle with. They hear boundaries and they think restrictions, oh, I can't do this, I can't do that. It just sounds like a list of rules.
But O'Brien completely flips that on its head. Boundaries don't limit pleasure. They define the playground. I mean, think about it. If I know for a fact that you're totally okay with X, Y, and Z, but absolutely not okay with A, I can go fully into X, Y, and Z with complete confidence. I don't have to hesitate. I don't have to worry that I'm crossing a line or, traumatizing you. I can just be present. That's the paradox. Boundaries create freedom.
I want to dig into that wheel of consent a bit more because the book talks about a specific dynamic I found really interesting. It's called the shadow giver. Can you break that down?
Oh, this is such a crucial concept. The wheel distinguishes between doing an action and who that action is actually for. The shadow giver is someone who gives and gives and gives. Maybe they always initiate sex, or they're always the one giving the massage or doing all the chores.
Okay.
But secretly, they're doing it because they want something in return.
So it looks like generosity on the surface, but it's really a transaction.
Exactly. And when they don't get the return they expected, maybe their partner doesn't reciprocate the sex or doesn't give them enough praise, the shadow giver becomes resentful. Agreement and consent mean being clear about that dynamic from the start. I am giving you this massage purely for your pleasure. I expect nothing back. That kind of clarity just kills resentment before it even has a chance to grow.
That's incredibly powerful. Okay, so tenet number 3 is the one that sounds the most technical. Choreography. And when I first read that, I'm thinking of a dance routine. Counting steps. 1, 2, 3, thrust.
And that's exactly what she clarifies it as not. It doesn't mean planning every single movement with a stopwatch. She defines choreography as the control of time and space to create pattern and meaning.
Control of time and space. That sounds very philosophical. What does that actually look like in a bedroom on a Tuesday night?
It's about removing the panic of, what do I do next? It means designing the environment, knowing where bodies are going to go. It's a body dance. If you think back to that normal people scene we talked about, Connell knows he's going to kiss her. Then they're going to move to the bed. Then they're going to discuss the condom. There's a flow. They aren't just crashing into each other.
So in real life, this could be as simple as dealing with the logistics.
Yes. It's checking in. I'm going to move here now. Is this comfortable? My arm is falling asleep. Let's shift. It's navigating the physical space with intention instead of just clumsiness. I mean, if you're worried about your leg cramping up, you're not present. You're not being intimate. You're just distracted. Choreography solves for the distraction.
And finally, the fourth tenet, closure.
This one is huge. On a set, closure is absolutely vital because the actor has to separate themselves from the character they're playing. They've been simulating sex, maybe screaming, crying, simulating orgasm for 4 hours straight. They need to shake that off before they go home to their real families. They have to de-roll.
But we aren't playing characters in our relationships. Or, well, we hope not. So why do we need closure?
In real life, we usually call this aftercare. Sex is an altered state.
Yeah.
You're vulnerable. Your hormones are going crazy. Oxytocin, dopamine. You're physically exposed. You can't just snap back to reality in a second.
Right. You can't go from the height of passion to, oh, did you remember to pay the electric bill in like 5 seconds flat?
Exactly. That causes emotional whiplash. Closure is the transition. It's the bridge. It could be a hug. It could be getting someone a glass of water. It could just be looking each other in the eye and checking in. How are you? It's about honoring the vulnerability you just shared before you go back to domestic reality.
I really like that image of a bridge. It stops that feeling of almost abandonment that can happen right after intimacy stops.
It creates a seal around the experience. We went there together, and now we are back.
So those are the tools: communication, consent, choreography, closure. But O'Brien argues, and this is a really critical pivot in the book, that you can't really use any of these tools effectively if you don't even know who you are in the first place.
Which brings us to the section she calls intimacy.
I do love a good wordplay.
It's a very clever breakdown of the word intimacy. Intimacy.
It sounds so simple, but it's actually a really confronting idea. You can't share what you don't know you have.
That's the whole crux of it. O'Brien points out that so many of us are complete strangers to our own desires. If a partner asks, what do you want? A lot of people just freeze. Not because they're shy, but because they genuinely have no idea. They've never asked themselves that question. They spent their whole lives trying to fulfill a script written by somebody else, by society, by movies, by their partners.
I think a lot of us just operate on autopilot. We do what we've seen in porn. We make the noises we think we're supposed to make. We so rarely stop and ask ourselves, what's my actual fantasy? What is my body actually like?
And to get to that answer, O'Brien suggests a practice she calls the body pleasuring exercise. This comes from her background in movement studies, specifically from a practitioner named Lorna Marshall.
Okay, body pleasuring sounds a little suggestive, like a euphemism, but it's not really sexual, is it?
Not in the way we usually think about it, no. The goal isn't orgasm. The goal is just sensation. It's about connecting with your body non-sexually first. It's about experiencing the sensation of your own skin, the joy of just moving, the feeling of simply being in your body.
It's about deconditioning the idea that touching yourself always has to lead to a climax.
Right. We tend to treat our bodies like machines. You know, we wash them, we feed them, we work them out, and we use them for sex. We rarely just feel them. This exercise is about mapping your own sensory landscape. Where do I hold tension? What does the skin on my arm feel like compared to the skin on my thigh?
She wants us to visualize desire, to actually pause and ask, what feels good? And the book mentions a really specific kind of funny resource here, the Little Book of Kama Sutra. But she emphasizes something about it. Get the one with cartoon drawings.
Yes. This is such a smart psychological trick. She recommends it specifically because the cartoons make it so low pressure. If you get a book with these high-definition photos of perfect supermodels twisted into pretzels, it just becomes another performance test. You look at it and you think, well, I can't do that. My hamstrings are too tight.
I am definitely not flexible enough for page 42.
Exactly. But with the cartoons, it's just shapes. It's abstract. She suggests using it almost like a menu. You know, look at the shapes together. Does that shape look interesting? Could we try a version of that? It takes all the intimidation out of it and puts the element of play back into it.
It's back to that playground idea again. It's not a test, it's an exploration. But okay, even if we know what we want, there's this massive biological misunderstanding that O'Brien and her collaborators really highlight. We need to talk about the anatomy of arousal.
This is, in my opinion, one of the most educational and important parts of the entire book. O'Brien works really closely with a psychosexual therapist named Lindsay Blair, and the insights she brings just completely dismantle the Hollywood script of sex.
The Hollywood script being, desire strikes like lightning, you get an instant erection, penetration, mutual explosive orgasm, and then you roll credits.
Exactly. That's the linear model. It goes, desire leads to excitement, which leads to a plateau, then orgasm, and finally, resolution.
Like climbing a mountain.
Yes.
Yeah.
Start at the base, you climb up, you get to the peak, you come back down. And for many men, that linear model is, somewhat accurate. It describes the typical male physiological response pretty well.
Up for women.
For a lot of women, and some men too, it's rarely a straight line. Lindsay Blair describes the female cycle as being more circular. And crucially, it doesn't always start with desire. For women, it often starts with willingness.
Willingness to be receptive. That is a huge distinction.
It is. A woman might not feel horny in the way a man might understand it. She might not have that spontaneous urge just pop into her head, but she might be willing to see if she can get there. And this leads to the concept of responsive desire versus spontaneous desire.
Spontaneous desire is, I'm hungry, I want food right now.
And responsive desire is, I wasn't even thinking about food, but I just walked past a bakery, I smelled the bread, and now I really want to eat.
And the book really emphasizes that women often need to get into the right headspace before their body follows.
Or vice versa. But the context is absolutely everything. For women, arousal is often just inextricably tied to emotional safety and the environment. Blair gives this fantastic example of the routine picture.
Oh, this one hit home for me. Tell us about that.
So, a woman might see her partner across a crowded room at a party. He's talking to someone else. He looks confident and charming. And suddenly, she desires him. Why? Because there's distance. There's mystery. He isn't the guy who forgot to load the dishwasher.
Right. But then, seeing that exact same partner up close, in the messy kitchen, brushing his teeth in his old sweatpants.
Nothing happens. Because the context is domestic, not erotic. Desire needs a bridge to cross. Esther Perel talks about this too. Desire needs distance. If you're too close all the time, if you're basically just roommates, that spark can die.
So O'Brien is suggesting we need to actually choreograph that distance.
Or at least choreograph the transition. You can't just flip a switch from parent mode to lover mode. You need that bridge. It might be a date night. It might be taking a shower. It might be as simple as changing the lighting in the room.
Now, there's another concept in this section that is, I would argue, the most important thing for safety and consent. It's called arousal non-concordance.
This is a term everyone needs to learn. It is the scientific fact that a physical response does not always equal psychological desire.
In plain English, your body can react in a way that your brain doesn't agree with at all.
Precisely. For example, a woman can become lubricated because of mechanical friction or even out of fear. It's a protective mechanism. The body is trying to prevent tearing and injury. It does not mean she's enjoying it. It does not mean she is consenting.
And for men,
A man can get an erection from fear, from anger, from needing to urinate, or from simple friction, without actually desiring sex on an emotional level.
that is so, so important, because if we don't know that, it leads to so much shame. A victim of assault might think, well, my body reacted, so I must have wanted it.
Which is an absolute tragedy. And it leads to so much legal confusion, too. But O'Brien is crystal clear on this. The body is a machine. It has reflexes. An eye waters when you poke it. That doesn't mean the eye is sad. A genital response is a reflex. Consent comes from the person, not from the plumbing.
Consent comes from the person, not the plumbing. We should put that on a billboard. Okay, so if the Hollywood script is broken, or at least incomplete, what do we replace it with? O'Brien suggests we stop trying to serve a 3-course meal every night, and instead, we should look at the tapas menu.
I love this analogy. I think it saves relationships.
I really do, too. It just takes so much pressure off the whole situation.
It does. The 3-course meal is that linear progression we talked about. Foreplay is the appetizer, intercourse is the main course, orgasm is dessert, and if you don't get to dessert or if you skip the main course, the meal is considered a failure.
Which is just ridiculous. I mean, imagine if you went to a restaurant and just had some amazing appetizers, some really good calamari, and you left full and happy, but the chef ran out and screamed at you for not ordering the cake.
That is exactly what we do to ourselves in the bedroom. We judge ourselves. Oh, we didn't finish. The tapas approach just says, hey, sometimes you just want a small plate.
So what's on the tapas menu?
Anything. Literally anything. Maybe tonight, intimacy is just 15 minutes of stroking each other's arms. Maybe it's taking a bath together. Maybe it's just holding hands under the stars.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's making out like teenagers for 10 minutes and then going straight to sleep.
And the key takeaway here is that it still counts.
It counts. Intimacy is valid, even if it doesn't end in penetration. In fact, for a lot of couples, especially those dealing with busy lives or kids or health issues, the tapas menu is the only way to keep that connection alive. If you only have the energy for a bite, have a bite. Don't starve yourself just because you don't have time for a full banquet.
And this mindset also helps with handling what we might see as disasters. There's an anecdote from Lindsay Blair in the book about a couple who tried a new exercise.
Yes, and the woman started crying in the middle of it. Now, in the old script, the linear script, that's catastrophe. Sex stopped, we failed, the mood is ruined.
But Blair completely reframed it.
She did. The husband stopped what he was doing. He didn't get angry or frustrated. He just held her. They hugged. They were honest about the emotion that came up.
So paradoxically, that was actually a moment of high intimacy.
Extremely high. Probably more intimate than if they just had some kind of mechanical sex. They connected. They comforted each other. They were vulnerable. That is a success. Blair notes that the erotic life of women in particular tends to be deeply tied to their emotional life. If you ignore the emotion just to push for the physical outcome, you end up losing both.
This feels like a good time to zoom out a bit. We've talked about the mechanics and the types of intimacy, but intimacy isn't a static thing, right? It changes as we age.
No, not at all. It's a lifelong journey. And O'Brien dedicates a pretty significant part of the book to intimacy across the lifespan. And it really starts with the next generation.
With sex education.
Or, the lack of good sex education. O'Brien critiques the current model, which is mostly just biology and danger. Here's a fallopian tube, don't get pregnant, and here's a list of STIs you should be afraid of.
It's all fear-based. It's all risk management.
Entirely. And what's missing is pleasure and consent and the actual human experience of it all. We're not teaching kids how to be at home in their own skins. We're not teaching them how to say yes or no with confidence. We're just teaching them to be afraid of their own bodies.
The book lists some really great resources for parents who want to do better. She mentions books like Mommy Laid an Egg, What Makes a Baby, and Sex is a Funny Word.
These books just normalize the conversation. The goal, O'Brien says, is to raise children who are at home in their own skins. If a child understands their body and respects it, they're so much less likely to violate someone else's boundaries or to have their own boundaries violated. She says parents need to be non-judgmental resources.
Because if you're not the resource, the internet will be.
And the internet, specifically pornography, teaches the most aggressive, distorted version of the linear script imaginable. It teaches that sex is a performance, not a connection.
And then on the complete other end of the spectrum, we have the aging body, menopause, the empty nest.
Which is so often framed as a time of loss, the change of life, the drying up. But O'Brien reframes it as a potential time of liberation.
He calls it the wild self.
Yes. Post-child rearing, many women find a new connection to their desires. The energy that went into raising kids can finally be turned back inward. But, and this is the reality check, the script has to change again. Your hormones shift. Estrogen drops. Lubrication might become an issue. For men, erections might not be as reliable or as firm.
And O'Brien addresses the issue of separate bedrooms here, which is often seen as, the death knell of a marriage, the sleep divorce.
It has such a stigma attached to it. But O'Brien says, look at the reality. If one partner snores like a freight train and the other is having hot flashes and kicking the covers off, sleeping in the same bed might just mean that nobody sleeps. And exhaustion is the enemy of intimacy.
So sleeping apart could actually save your sex life.
If, and this is the huge PD, if you communicate about it, you have to visit each other, you have to schedule it. It actually brings a kind of courtship back into the relationship. Would you like to come to my room? Becomes a sexy invitation again.
Then what about erectile dysfunction, or ED? She points out that the medical model treats it in a purely mechanical way. Here's a pill, go fix the hydraulics.
Which completely ignores the emotional and the sensual component. If a man takes Viagra but doesn't address the underlying lack of intimacy or the anxiety he's feeling, he's just bringing a mechanically operational part to a totally disconnected encounter. O'Brien suggests that older adults might need to move away from acrobatics and more towards sensual connection. Vibrators, lubrication, massage, these aren't failures. They're just new tools for the new script.
This whole idea of rewriting the script brings us to the final major theme of the book, which is the hero's journey.
This is O'Brien applying her storytelling background directly to our lives. We all know the hero's journey arc, right? The hero leaves home, faces adversity, slays the demon, and returns transformed.
We usually think of that for, like, Luke Skywalker or Frodo, but for a relationship.
The demon in our relationship journey is often our own shame. It's our past trauma. It's the silence we grew up with. O'Brien talks about her own Catholic upbringing and that whole veil of secrecy around sex. Slaying that demon means having the awkward conversations, facing the difficult stuff, and refusing to be ruled by shame anymore.
And the new script isn't the one we found in those old 1970s books like The Joy of Sex, though she does give that book credit for at least introducing playfulness.
Right. The new journey requires turning points. We have to navigate the transition from the hookup phase to a real partnership phase.
Yeah.
We have to survive early parenthood, which is a massive intimacy killer if you're not careful. We have to navigate menopause. Each of these is a plot point where the hero, the couple, has to adapt and grow.
And she has a much grander vision for this, doesn't she? This isn't just about having better orgasms.
No, not at all. Her vision is societal. She believes that sexual rights are human rights. And if we can base our most intimate relationships on respect and clear communication and real consent, that creates a template for a more tolerant society as a whole.
That's a profound thought. If you learn to respect a no in the bedroom, you're probably more likely to respect a no in the boardroom or on the street.
Exactly. Tolerance and respect start in the private sphere.
So what does this all boil down to? Let's wrap this up with some key takeaways for our listeners.
Okay, first and foremost, intimacy. Intimacy. It all starts with self-knowledge. You have to know what you want before you can ever ask for it. So do the work. Do the body pleasuring exercise.
Second, structure creates safety, and safety creates freedom. Don't be afraid of the intimacy on set guidelines. Use them. Talk, agree, choreograph, and have closure. Don't rely on mind reading.
And third, ditch the linear script if it doesn't serve you. Order off the tapas menu. Let go of the pressure for that 3-course meal every single time. Let intimacy be small and varied and frequent.
It's just amazing how much we expect our sex lives to run on magic. We plan our careers, we plan our vacations, we plan our meals, but we expect our most complex, vulnerable human connection to just happen.
It's the great irony, isn't it? But with a little bit of structure, the magic actually becomes more reliable.
And that brings us to a challenge for you, the listener.
Yes, tonight.
Yeah.
Don't just fall into bed. Ask yourself the 4 questions O'Brien poses. Who am I? What do I need? Where am I going? And what are my desires?
And if you're feeling brave, ask your partner. Or, start simple. Try one small dish from the tapas menu, maybe just 2 minutes of eye contact.
And don't forget the closure afterward.
Check the choreography of your own life. Make sure you're dancing with someone, not just bumping into them in the dark.
Beautifully put.
And that's it for this deep dive into intimacy by Ita O'Brien. Thanks for listening to the Mindset Matters Book Club. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Goodbye.